Lovely Sunday afternoon. Can you hear me in the back there? Barely? Wait, oh, sorry. I'm in trouble now. We're part of a group from, this is Dunnings Creek meeting, Dunnings Creek Friends Meeting. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. We have a Peace and Social Concerns Committee, and group is concerned with learning about the untold stories of people from our community, Black, brown, white, untold stories. And our Still Listening series, which we had one back in October, and now we're here we are again. And we give opportunities for stories to be told so we can learn from each other. Two things. In the back is a guest book. And if you want to hear about our next event, which is going to be in October with Harriet Gaston, who is a, Darnell has it there, a professor from Penn State Altoona, then you'll know, we can like keep you on our list to keep you informed. Now, so we thank you all for coming here today to hear what D. Marshall Myers has to tell us. He is a lifelong resident from, born and raised in Everett, and she tells about growing up under segregation and the challenges and changes for Black people in rural PA, starting from about the 1940s through today. Before Dee speaks, we're going to settle in for 2 minutes of silent worship so we can settle in. And this is the Quaker way. This is what we do. Whenever we begin, we always settle in for a little period of silent worship. Thank you, friends. I would like to remind everyone to make sure your cell phones are on silent. And with pleasure, I give you D. Marshall Myers.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for coming. The testimony of a Black woman: love, justice, and equality. Racism, blatant hatred, open with disgust to any group. Bigotry, hidden racism that rears its ugly head at any time it wants to. Love, God, family, friends. Justice, respect for all people. Equality, equal rights. This is my story. Be that leper. Be that one leper. Jesus healed 10 lepers. They all walked away. One came back to thank him. This is what we need to do. If you've been helped financially, given a home to live in, spiritually, say thank you, just don't walk away. Just think, if the world were that one leper, brothers and sisters, what would we be like today? I want to tell you a story. I can cook. My daughter's a better cook. Well, this is my daughter, Lisa. She's a chef. But I was fixing breakfast for my dad one morning. He loved a hearty breakfast. He came down the steps. He sat down. There was a bowl of cereal. It's like, what is this? And I said, what this, what? I burned the bacon. Yeah, you did. They didn't want us. They just didn't want us. My mother walked all over Everett. My mother walked all over Everett to all the churches to see if they would accept her 4 children. She wanted her kids to go to Sunday school. They all said no, except the Everett Church of the Brethren. They said yes. We welcome anyone into our church. And from there on, this was in the 50s, 1950. And from then on, any Black person that lived in Everett went to the Church of the Brethren. Which it's ironic that I live on Water Street and the Church of the Brethren is on Water Street, and I live at the top of the hill. So it's ironic that I went to church there all my life. Now I live near it. But prior to this, there was a church, Mount Pisgah. It's an all-Black church. The cornerstone was 1884. It was the first Black church in Everett. The pastor was Pastor Brown, the first Black minister of this church. This church, by the way, again, ironically, sat at the top of the hill in my backyard where I live right now. That's where the church was. That actually I could go up to the bottom of the bank and crawl up there. I could crawl now. I used to be able to walk, but I'd have to crawl now to get up there. But unfortunately, the church fell down. It was a year ago, Lisa? A year ago. It just fell down. But that church was an awesome church. About 15 to 20 years ago, something like that, my husband and I were in our home, and I saw a bus coming up over the hill. And it stopped by our garage. And I said to him, that's a tour bus. They're coming to look at the church. I'm going down to talk to them. Wow, that didn't happen. He beat me down the steps. So down he went. I thought, well, that shouldn't have happened. But it did. So he come back in, he said, they like me. They even clapped for me. I was a little bit grumpy. Well, a lot grumpy. Because my husband was white and he took my job away from me. But during that time, the church caught on fire. Wow, mysteriously. A fire was set to the church. It burned to the ground. Beside you, there are pictures. There's a picture there beside you. At the top of my house, where the church was, is that tree. You can see the angle of my roof of my home. That tree was around 150 years old. When the church burnt down, the minister on Sundays, the minister would go out and preach under the tree. They would pray under the tree and sing under that tree. It was just wonderful. As I said, when the church, the bus came up over the hill, when they started to sing, it echoed and it actually went down the hill. The people in town could hear them singing. And up the hill they came, just to listen to them sing. And I just think that was just so wonderful. But anyway, that's the picture you have. That's the tree behind my house. And it's for you to keep. So my husband and I went to a restaurant in Bedford. And we sat down and a server come up to us and thought he was like sitting here and I was sitting across from me in the booth. And she kind of turned towards my husband and said, "What can I get you?" Well, prior to ordering anywhere in any restaurant, Charlie and I always decided what we wanted to eat, and then he'd order our food. And that's exactly what he did. She gave our drink order and our food order. So she left and came back with the food and she set it down. Now she turned fully towards him and leaned in and said, "Is there anything else I can get you?" And I thought, what's going on here? So I said, before she left, I said to her, "Would you please get me a piece of lemon for my drink?" She just left. So I said to Charlie, "Uh-oh, we have a racist waitress." He said, "Be gentle. He knows how I am. When racism raises their ugly head, he knows how I get." And I thought, yeah, he's right. I'll be nice. Probably if he wasn't there, I probably wouldn't have been as nice. But anyway, she came back with the checks. And I said to her, "Did you forget my lemon?" And she didn't bother answering. She just laid the checks down, separate checks. And I said, "We're married. Why the separate checks? Oh, and by the way, why did you snub me?" She never said a word. Her face got blood red. I said, "Go get your manager now." And she did. And he came back and I explained to him how she treated us, how she treated me unfairly. And I said, she needs to have a course in customer service. Well, we left, Charlie paid for the food, we left the restaurant. About a month later, I got a phone call from their corporate office with an apology, and they sent me gift cards. I never did get that piece of lemon. I worked at Bob Evans. I was the manager there. And my husband Charlie would come in periodically to visit. So when he entered the restaurant, he was walking back towards the dining room. there were two girls standing there by the podium, and all customers had to stop there before they were seated in their dining room. Now, I moved off to the left. She didn't see me. And the one girl said to the other girl, I didn't know Dee's husband was white. I heard her. So I walked back over and I said, what did you say? And looked like she's seen a ghost. And she says, I didn't know your husband was white. He is. I didn't know that. He never told me that. You wait until he gets home this evening. We are going to have a serious talk. Well, the hostess later realized that I was just joking. But was I? Gotta have a sip of water. I don't have, ladies, no lemon.
Next time.
Okay, next time. Deb, go get a piece of lemon. After my mom retired from dry cleaning, my dad and I continued to stay at the shop and work. And one day our chief of police walked in and he said, do you have any relatives from out of town visiting? No. Why? Two black girls just robbed the dollar store. I thought maybe you knew who they were. So my dad was working in the back and I said, Dad, come up here. And he did. So I told him exactly what the chief said. My dad was livid. And those of you who knew my dad, he was happy most of the time. But when he was angry, look out. So he did tell the chief off. That chief left in a big hurry. But that is a true story. To this day, I don't know whether they caught the two girls or not. But they weren't my relatives. They weren't. Darnell, Dr. Washington.
Yeah. Glad you got
Dr. Garnell Washington. It's your fault I'm here. Now, if you folks like me, thank you. But if you don't, Garnell, it's your fault. Oh, Joey and I went to another restaurant to a Christmas party with 6 other couples. Food was great. The server was wonderful. The service was just out of this world. So we enjoyed our meal and we laughed and talked about our children and grandchildren and everything. I had a very, very nice time. At the end of the meal, the server came and she handed 6 single checks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the 6 couples. 2 separate checks to Charlie and I. Here we go again. I said to her, why did you give us separate checks? We're married. I don't, go get your manager, please. So the manager came back and I explained everything to her and everything. And she says, I'll take care of the problem. But prior to that, which I forgot to mention, was the fact we were in a private room. When I asked her the question about the separate checks, it got very, very quiet. When the server left, the 6 couples that were there with us, they all started apologizing. Oh, Dee, we're sorry. Oh, it shouldn't have happened. I said, don't apologize. You don't have to apologize, but thank you. So, but when we left, the holiday spirit certainly wasn't there. Break time. As a manager of Bob Evans, my job was to make sure all the patrons in the dining room were taken care of. And I always walk the floor, and that's one of the second biggest restaurant in Bob Evans, which has 585 restaurants. We were the second biggest. But anyway, I was walking the floor and I talked to all the customers. I like to talk. I bet y'all didn't know that, did you? I like to talk. Anyway, I stopped at the table where these 2 ladies were sitting. I asked them how their meal was. All was delicious. It was fine. I said, good. She said, you know, you look like the maid that my friend has.
Oh, my.
And I said, I had to put my hand on my hip. Oh, wait. Was her name Florence? And they said, no. I said, good, because I was with the Jeffersons and I had 5 nominations. My sister and I have been singing all our lives. I was soprano, she was alto. From 7th grade to our senior year. We sang at school functions, we sang at different churches, we sang at assemblies. Come graduation, egotistically, I just knew we were going to be asked to sing. We weren't. I was so disappointed. One of our teachers explained to us the reason why we weren't asked to sing, because the administration was afraid that people in the audience may be offended because we were singing. Well, that was tough to hear, especially a lot of times when there was an assembly and somebody bowed out from not being able to perform. Doris and I might get a 10 or 15-minute notice to sing a song, and we did. So that was disappointing. And then a second teacher said the same thing to us, told the same story. They had other chorus members sing. So after graduation, when we left the stage, they had to walk up 2 aisles. And my grandfather, Harding, who happened to be there, was sitting on the right, and I happened to be able to pass him. And my grandfather never heard my sister and I sing. So when I went by him, he reached up and grabbed my hand, and I held onto his hand, and then I walked on out. That was probably the most disappointing thing that ever happened in my life, but it did. While we were in school, we both were selected to go to district chorus in Windsor. And our director found a very nice lady for us to stay with in Windsor. There were no families in Windsor that would accept Negroes. She did. And the closest place would have been Johnstown, which was 5 or 6 miles from Windsor, maybe more, maybe less, I'm not sure. But anyway, her name was Mrs. Jakovich. Such a nice lady. We stayed overnight. She was absolutely wonderful. Oh, by the way, she was Jewish. Years and years and years and years ago. Wait. That's 4. No, never mind. Years and years ago. My mother would take my sister and I to the Bedford Fair. Gardell, behave. Would take us to the Bedford Fair. And we were down by the grandstand. Now who's standing there? I gotta hold on so Lisa don't yell at me. The Lone Ranger. Oh my gosh, the Lone Ranger. Clayton Powell, the real Lone Ranger on television. He was at the Bedford County Fair. We were so excited. But then we hid behind Mom's skirt. This big man with a mask was saying hello to us, and we were hiding behind her skirt. But inside, I was just screaming with joy. I was so happy to meet the Lone Ranger. I'm sure most of you, probably the young kids back there, never saw Lone Ranger, but that was the automatic watch on Saturday mornings on TV. But we were thrilled that we got to meet that man. Oh, we couldn't wait to get back home and tell Daddy, see what he missed, because he was supposed to be with us. He decided not to, so that was on him. Yeah. While in high school, both of us, my sister and I, were in the band. And it always went to Winchester, Virginia for the Cherry Blossom Festival. So we went, and the school prepaid our dinner for after the parade. So once the parade was over, and actually, this is what I did. When the parade was over, I decided to watch the parade. Living here in Bedford County, and unless you go further to the city, you don't see black bands. So I decided I'm going to stand and watch the black bands go by. They march differently, different beats. These majorettes, when they were doing their thing, they had their little hands flipping that skirt, and the guys along the side were going nuts and crazy. And when they heard the guys yelling, that skirt even flipped a little bit more. I stood there and I watched it because I wanted to see the black bands. My Uncle Kane Marshall had a band here in Everett that he put together, taught him to play the instruments because he can play every instrument. But anyway, he had an award-winning band in Pittsburgh. And he would tell the majorettes that when you go by the judges, to make sure that your left hip hit the side of the road and that your right hip hit the other side of the road. I want you marching. Of course, that's what he did, but I know I've getting away a little bit. But anyway, they prepaid our meals, and so we got there. Our band director had a shrilly and chilly whistle. That scare you? When you heard that, it hurt your ears. We all got quiet. So the manager come out and said, "We have your meals ready for your band, but your 2 girls are going to have to eat outside." Another whistle. Y'all got quiet again. "Don't touch anything. I'll be back." And he left, came back into the restaurant, and the manager was standing there. Wait, what? Another whistle. And the manager was standing there. He said, "If you can't feed my girls, you can't feed my band. And we're going across the street to another restaurant where they'll serve us." So we were all getting ready to leave. And I saw the manager stand there. So I'm like, And left the building. The cemetery at Everett, totally segregated until 1980. When you enter the cemetery, to your right are all the Black families. To the left, as far as you can see, were the white families. And like I said, it changed in 1980 when my uncle was buried. And he was buried down across the hill there towards the golf course. Segregation ended. A couple of months ago, I was going into a local grocery store, and an older white gentleman came out, and I'm walking along, and he says, "Go back to where you belong." Stood there. I can't even remember my own address. Well, I needed to get some groceries first, I wanted to tell him. And then I can go back to where I belong, which is 405 Water Street. But you know, I was very sad and hurt. Anymore, I'm just not in the mood. So it angered and it made me so sad. And I got in the car and I sat there for a few moments and I thought, this is, I think it was early February, somewhere in there, 2023. And somebody is telling me to go back to where I belong. And my family, and a lot of us were born right here in Bedford County, and I was born in Everett, Pennsylvania. That's where I belong.
Right.
There was another manager that worked at Bob Evans. Actually, there were 6. I'm sorry. There was 2 Black ladies that approached him. And they said to him, "We think you're Black." He didn't say anything. Actually, I don't think he knew. Well, he was shocked to hear that. He said, "But there's an older, gorgeous woman that works here." Oh, wait a minute. No, I just added the gorgeous. I didn't say that. There's an older Black woman that works there. We think she's Puerto Rican. And he says, "No, she's Black." By the way, he was Italian. My brother was a senior and a smoker in high school. While in class, the principal walks in and tells the teacher she's going to remove him from the classroom. He was smoking in the boys' restroom. Tony heard what he said. He denied it. He said, "It wasn't me." He said, "Yeah, there's 2 guys said that you were smoking in the restroom." Tony said, "Wasn't me." Now, at that particular time, there were 4 of us, 4 Blacks in the school, my brother and sister, and my brother and my older sister, and then Doris and I. That was it. So they're going to blame Tony. But a female friend stood up and defended him. She said, no, it wasn't him. I know who the culprit was and who was smoking in the bathroom. I heard two guys say, yeah, we know who it was, but we're going to blame Tony. And she spoke up and defended him. This girl, to this day, is very, very nice, was popular in school, well known, and she and Tony were friends. If it weren't for her honesty and kindness, my brother would have been suspended for 5 days. Is a 5-day suspension if you're caught smoking in any part of the building or on the grounds. If it weren't for her, he would have been suspended. And to this day, I'm just so grateful that she was honest and told the truth. I really have to hold on for this one now. Yeah. When I was working at the restaurant, I always carried an index card with me. Always. You never know who was going to be at the restaurant eating. We've had Aretha Franklin. We had William Christopher, Jamie Farr from MASH. We had Jim Leyland, a former Pittsburgh Pirate manager, some pro basketball players, some other football players, but they wouldn't say their names, but I'm pretty sure I knew who they were, but they wouldn't say, so I didn't get their autograph. They're lost. But anyway, I was walking around the floor and I stopped at this table and I said, how's it? Oh, I know you are. You're Carnell Lake, Pittsburgh Steelers. You're a safety. I was so excited. Oh my gosh. Oh, and anybody that knew me knew I was a diehard Steeler fan. And his wife was sitting there with his little girl. And I said, may I have your autograph? He goes, sure. And I said, do you mind? She said, no, I'm used to it. I said, thank you. And I'm sitting there patiently waiting for my autograph. And he signed it. I thought, oh, that particular day, I had 6 grill cooks and they were all guys. So I went up and said, hey guys, guess who's in the restaurant? Carnell Lake. No, he's not. I said, yes, he is. He's in the dining room, he's eating. No, he's not. Steve, we don't believe you. Okay. So I went back out and they were ready to leave. And I said, Carnell, would you do me a favor? He said, sure. I said, would you go back and show them who you are, my grill cooks? So he went back on my server line, and they had a big open window where the grill cooks are there, like they were lined up. And he looked and said, hi guys. They went, that's Carnell Lake. Hey, get an autograph. I went, nope. Too late. There were quite a few that came through there. But to be a little bit serious now, I want to talk about change. Not everybody wants it or likes it. It could be your job, new management, a new app for your computer, time change, daylight savings time. Not everybody likes it. But the biggest and the most wonderful change for me was the Civil Rights Act of 1964. When they outlawed discrimination based on race, color, sex, religion, and national origin. Some states hated that, but it happened. Too bad it did. When you talk to each other and learn from each other, there's one word I forgot, I'm sorry folks, and listen to each other, you earned the title of respect. And that's all it takes is respect. If we listen to each other, and like I said, talk to each other. And the thing about it, the key, I think, is listening. You can talk to somebody, but sometimes when they say whoosh, goes over the top of your head, sometimes that does happen. But we need to listen. And once you've earned that respect, that's it. As Jesus says, love thy neighbor. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Oh, she had to get her boo one. That's her boo.
It's my show.
Thank you.
Can you take a picture with her?
Oh, you don't want to take a picture of me?
No, he did.
Oh, thank Jack.
Good job.
Okay. You could ask any question you want. Anybody have any questions?
First, I think you should give Delores another round of applause. He was the author and the performer, both. She wrote and performed this one-woman show.
Well, before I forget, I want to thank Dr. Garnell Washington for helping me. He was such a pain. We start. No, I'm not doing that. I can't do that. No, I can't. They asked me to give a speech. They didn't ask me to entertain. I'm not doing this. And this was every time he'd come down 2 to 3 times a week. And finally, it's just like it got into my head, you know, okay, I think I could do this. But if it weren't for this man, I would not be able to do what I just did. So thank you, Darnell. Thank you. And I also want to thank Susan Williams for asking me here today. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. And to the Quaker Meeting House and friends, thank you for the invitation. And before you leave, folks, please, please, please be generous. We have a donation jar there and one back on the table that benefits the Quaker House. So please be generous. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Any questions? Yes.
I have a comment, not really a question. My brother started high school with Delores, graduated with her. We're best friends in the same gang in school. They're still close friends.
Yes.
Just don't mention politics.
No. Oh, no. I
Not
learned my
only
lesson.
that, my brother went on and became band director at Everett High School. And guess who his drum major was?
You're right. I forgot about that part. Thank you. Yes. Question.
Just 3 quick questions. Is the tree still there?
Yes, the tree is still there.
What year was the robbery at the,
I don't remember. I'm gonna make a guess and say 80s.
okay.
You know, I think that Willard Klein, would he be the chief Barb in the 80s? Willard Klein? Barbara. Would Chief Willard Klein be chief back in the 80s?
He had been in the.
Yeah, okay, so it's been in the 80s, yes.
I just wanted to get a picture of.
Okay. Did you have a question? Do it, yeah.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, one more. I'm sorry, dear.
Did you play in the band?
I played Dorsey, I both played trombone. And Fred did too. Fred played trombone also. The 3 of us.
I did not.
It was too big of an instrument. She said she wanted a little one, so she got clarinet.
And the prize, and then me.
Actually, my name is Monique, and if nobody here knows me, I think we are friends with Ellen, and she's the one we love to be. But it's not really a question, it's a comment I had. When I was at work in Washington, one of my closest friends was from Haiti. And she had many stories like you had.
Yeah.
And every day I think of that, she passed away many years ago, but anyway, I think for us, white, pink, whatever you call us, it's horribly difficult to really have a sense of what people like you and other non-white, people are going through, have been going through over so many years, centuries actually. And we don't have any idea what it feels to have all these little humiliations every day. And it was a little bit better, let's say, during some past years, and now getting back into force. You mentioned a few months ago that somebody said they have no idea what it feels, if it was in their camp, would they be able to react with honor, dignity like you do? Because you still keep your face and your sense of honor, your dignity, and not many people on the other side would be able to react like that. So
Thank you.
so thank you. And also, I have been studying a little bit what Quakers did during the underground, and I am in awe of the bravery of these people, because at a time when it was so dangerous, to do that, and we may have to go. Some people may have to go underground again, unfortunately.
Could you hear in the back her question?
No.
Um,
I'm sorry.
This
is not.
Yeah, to try to stay, she was saying that her friend from Haiti had similar stories. And that Delores had said, and somehow the white or the pink people don't know these stories.
They don't understand that.
And don't understand them. And
And they don't have any sense of what Black, brown people are going through every single day. It's not just one to one, it's every single day. The little humiliations, or the little kicks, or the little that are so hurtful, and I try all the time to understand and sort of associate, trying, because sometimes we do it without even realizing.
Realizing.
we are doing that.
I get
yeah,
that.
1 second, Dad. Mandy had her hand up first.
You mentioned the fire, you did air quotes, but I didn't know what you meant by that, and I just was wondering.
They weren't able to prove it, and I apologize for not saying anything, but they think it was set on fire deliberately.
The church.
The church,
The black church.
the
And
black
when
church,
was that? What time frame?
The
That was
1800s.
In the 1800s.
1800s, yes. Mhm.
Oh, okay.
And
And
then
then they
it-
rebuilt it, but now it's.
Then, it was rebuilt and then it just fell down, yeah. Yes,
Gary.
Mr. Man, what?
What did you say?
I said, Mr. Man, that's what I said.
Well, you had your hand up. Oh, I know. I just would like to. Can I talk for now?
Yes, please.
I would like to share with the group of people the feeling that you get when somebody looks at you because you're this color or because you're this color, how painful that is. And they don't even know you. You might be one of the meanest people in the world, or one of the nicest people in the world, but the color of your skin labels you, you know, and I don't understand it, don't appreciate it, and don't know why it's like that.
So I think that that's like the point that Dolores was saying too, she'll jump in, maybe notice, listen, learn, and I couldn't remember. I'll just say it the way I said, notice, name, and respond, you know, like that, maybe we won't understand it by ourselves, but maybe that's what the problem is. How many things can you understand by yourself? Like how many times going through your own head, around and around and around, do you get trapped in your own mind? We're not made to be understanding things by ourselves. If even things that are horrendous need a collective social learning. Now, why is it that race is outside of that? Why is it that saying the word black or white is a special thing?
No, I agree with you, what you said, yeah. It shouldn't be, oh, go ahead, Peggy. That's what.
I think what I learned from listening to Delores today is all the times when she named what was happening to her, very kind of calmly and maybe a little bit angry, but very clear and sort of said, you know, I can't believe what you just said or what you just did. And that to me is an incredibly powerful lesson that I'm trying to learn in my own life. You can speak up, you know, we can say something times, and I heard you say again and again and again, you maybe even turned it into a joke sometimes, but you didn't just let stuff go.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. That was a learning moment for me.
Thank you.
In this talk.
Jim,
Yeah, I have two comments and a question. So first comment is, go down, Dr. Washington, with my brother. Please go up there. But my first comment is the social learning is real. I've been all around the world, different countries, different cities, in the military, out of the military, whatever. But if I go to an urban area, and I just came from North Carolina, the east side of Durham is very rough. I hit my locks. I feel ashamed to do that because when I go over to Chapel Hill, I don't hit my locks. And these two people raised me, so I wasn't in, you know, a foster home with white people. These two people raised me, but it's social learning, you know, and I'm embarrassed that I would hit my locks in Durham, which is the ghetto of that side of town, and Chapel Hill is Chapel Hill.
Man.
You know, but it's again, it's social learning. I'm born black, raised by black people, so our society is deep in it, deep in it. The other comment I have is about, boy, I forgot, chemo brain. But my question is, why did you decide to do this? Oh, no, my other comment was I remembered there's a movie, is a Dear White People. I don't know if anybody ever saw that. Yeah. So it's basically black person, Dear White People. There's a movie called Dear White People.
Yeah, but
It said worth watching.
It's worth watching. It's
So-
on Netflix.
Yeah, and it's basically a black perspective of what how we perceive. And what Miss Peggy said about, oh, Doris told the story very calm and matter of fact, and no emotion, no anger. She's very angry. But we've been taught that's how we communicate with you. We communicate with you like this. We're at home, we just but we learn that we communicate with people outside our culture, within their culture, calmly, full sentences, make eye contact, articulate. See, I do it well. These two people talk. And so that was my other comment. My question is, why did you want to do this? Like, Garnell's very forceful, but why did you want to do it?
He beat me. I just to let people know what it was like. My parents owned a dry cleaning business. 2%, 98%, 99% were white in that town. We relied on that 99% for business. So we were taught, don't do anything, don't do this, don't do that. I mean, it was just like, we really couldn't do anything. You get in trouble in school, you know, just, you gotta take it, that's it. Because they were in business. And this is what we had to do. Because we didn't want people going out and saying something bad about our family, and then my dad lose his business. I did this because I wanted people to know what it was like for me to grow up. And right now, just even these stories and everything, even with the guy with the grocery store, the one that I most upset about was the graduation rate. That's the one that especially my sister and I did so much for that school, so much. And not to be asked, because there are some people in the audience might not appreciate that. Now that's when it hit home. That's when it really hit me like, wow, your own hometown. Wow, what did Jesus say about Nazareth? They don't know you in your own hometown. I guess it's true. But that's why I wanted to do it, to let people know what it was like for me growing up, especially in the 50s and the 60s. So,
I have one more comment, I'm sorry. Just real quick, I'm sorry, it's on my heart that I love Bedford County. I've been everywhere, I love Bedford County, and you know, it's made up of majority white people, non people of color. And I think sometimes when we do stuff like this, and I'm just being presumptuous, that y'all think we're attacking the people that support us. Like, why are you making me feel some kind of way? I like you, I feel you. But I think that when we get a chance to express ourselves, we really appreciate it. But I also know that all people of all colors go through, of all races, of all genders, go through situations. And it's just kind of exciting now that we're being heard in our hometown.
Yeah.
And that's the part exciting.
1 second, Sylvia, and then.
You know, this is happening right now. I'm thinking, I went to the gynecologist at Mason Hospital for several years. He moved away. And they got traveling gynecologists in for a 6-month spell. And they called me ahead of time and said, we have a traveling gynecologist, he's black. Do you still want your appointment? Now, that was not that long ago. Maybe 5 years. Do you still want your appointment? And I said, well, yes, what's that matter?
I've never been asked if I didn't want to wait.
Sure.
I was not, I was Quakers.
This is a favorite club.
Silent applause.
Good.
I thought there was a hearing impaired. I just do want to
That's
say that even after all these things that I've been through, born and raised in Everett and Bedford County, I loved it here. I'm still here. And I love my town, and I had a lot of friends in Everett, and classmates and everything like that. But these are the things that happened that I couldn't even tell years ago. Didn't dare tell the story, but now I couldn't. So, yes, good. Yes, yes.
I come from a different world, basically. I'm a graduate 1965 Bedford High School. Okay, and what?
We do this together all the time, me and him.
She dated and married my cousin.
Oh, wait a minute.
It's gonna be a story good.
Okay, well, one of the things and one of my life contacts, my father raised harness horses. My father owned his own harness horses. So that was kind of a difference for a black person. Okay, and I don't know how many times my mother told me, get your father. because he swung at somebody or was cussing somebody out because they attacked him because he was black and an owner. Most of the blacks on the racetrack worked as grooms and trainers. But my dad was a different step. And he took no crap. And he had his own racehorses, and he trained and drove them and raced, which was a big different step for me to go through when the guys on the track all worked for white people, So it was a big different step for me, and I'm glad I went through it. And, the world looks different, but the world is not that bad. And there's a lot of nice people in the world that support you and back you and help my father with racehorses. I'd just like to throw that out.
How many people are historians in the room? Or even like have a hobby of collecting history? Raise your hand. Or genealogy, yes. Yeah, so as we think about the stories of history, as we mix Dolores's stories into our stories of history, maybe as you're thinking today, what does it tell you about the story of history that you already know? The thing that you've already read about and learned about, what does hearing Dee's talk today, how does it change what you've already learned and read and thought about? Or listening to my dad's reflection on how does it add to or change or twist or edit what you've already studied and considered? This is like embodying the work here today, like taking it in and mixing it with what you know and coming up with something new. There's no use to just sit there and take it in like it's just washing over you. Like the Lord said, some of these things go right over our head. That, guess what? That puts you farther away from your friend. I tell somebody at work, I don't like you. After a year of getting further and further away, I don't trust you. You've broken my trust, not asking me questions. So I charge her twice as much to work with her. But like today, like embody these stories, mix it with what you have thinking now, and share something new where you're at today. Couple more questions. You had your hand.
Wait a minute, I had a comment, just in response to what you said about how does this change us, and then I had a question. I think for me, the conversation is really important. When I've run into different Washington Harding family members in my years at the Bedford Church of the Brother, and it has changed me with an understanding of the idea that there are owners of horses in our history, right? That this isn't about just freed slaves that come to Bedford County, that there is this group of African-American people of color who have lived in this community long before my ancestors showed up here. And so I think that for me has been part of my change and my embodiment of understanding the history of Bedford Hill. My question, I think, is to any person of color in the room who wants to respond to that. It's an apology question, apologizing that you have to speak this truth because we've missed it. But I guess the question is, how can we be like friends of your brother Tony? What is it that we can do to make a difference in our community?
If I could, sure. What I'm experiencing, because I was born and raised in Everett as well, and a lot of her stories I experienced in high school as well, because I was one of maybe 2 Black people that were still in high school. And now moving back to this area in 2013,
what can you do? It's not our job to educate you. No, but I'm just gonna, it's not a
Okay.
bad thing. It is, if you see it, say something. When I'm out with my friends socializing and someone makes a joke about Black Lives Matter and none of my friends around them defend it, I'm the only voice. So what happens to me is, oh, you make everything about race. Or you're angry. I come off as the angry Black woman. To Jennifer's point, we have to speak in terms to make you understand. No, don't stay silent about it anymore. Be the person that, if you see it, even if I'm not there and someone cracks a racial joke, be that voice to say, that is wrong, and I'm not gonna sit here and listen to that. Educate yourself.
Especially when there's not a brown person there. That,
Exactly.
you all listen to each other, like, if we listen to each other, so especially when there's not a brown person,
Yeah.
speak your truth. Especially when it's not a brown or yellow or whatever person around.
And seek the knowledge, like, for example, I can't tell you how many conversations I had to have with non-people of color about why the Aunt Jemima logo was so offensive. We grew up knowing it was offensive. You just weren't in my household, you know. First and foremost, no African American grandmother or mother was using pancake mix. But aside from that, nobody understands that that logo had always been offensive. Always. I mean, we knew what it meant. And when people started making a big deal out of it, well, why all of a sudden? I'm like, you obviously didn't have a Black friend because that wasn't in their house. They never appreciated it. And the whitewashing of Aunt Jemima then came, oh, well, she died a millionaire. And I'm like, no, she didn't. She didn't. And C.J. Walker was the first African-American millionaire, not Aunt Jemima. Aunt Jemima died in a car accident. And, you know, that wasn't, I said, but all you gotta do is do some education. So before getting up in arms over a logo, read about it first and say, well, maybe I don't know the whole history. I had to get into an argument with a friend of mine who's white, who has a Black lawn jockey on her lawn, and she thinks it's okay. And I'm like, it really had nothing to do with the Underground Railroad. There is no history that it really did indicate the Underground Railroad, and it's offensive. You have the one that's painted jet black with big red lips. It's offensive, and so he's no longer my friend. You know, I mean, if you can't understand how racist that is, I don't know what to do for you. But you can't whitewash the history. Like, do some research. We're asked.
What I hear you saying then is that do my research and be ready to speak truth to the research and to my friends' stories. Okay, thank you.
That was the big thing.
I've been,
Susan, and then
No, I was just pointing over there.
that's Susan.
No, I just wanted to say that, I think what's really important is that we are here. That is the most important thing. We're here. All of us. The other thing is the Brownsville project in Frostburg. Okay, I've been involved in that with several of the events and know the organizers. So we just need more of this. We need to be in the same room and we need to understand and listen. You said listen. You said listen. That's what we need to do.
Maybe you could tell me what the Brownsville project.
Yeah, I was just saying, I was like, what's Brownsville?
Oh, the Brownsville, there was an area in Frostburg, if you know Frostburg, Maryland, it's got a small university. There was an area called Brownsville, and it is where the African Americans lived in Frostburg, okay, the segregated area, but they owned the property. And when the state, I'm not making this short, when the state went to expand the school, all kinds of political wranglings occurred. And to get the governor to accept it, they had to show them a piece of where they were going to expand Frostburg State. And it ended up being Brownsville, and they got paid
very little money for their property, and they all had to start over again. I knew personally one person that happened to his parents, but he was a child. And when that happened, and he's my neighbor, but, so anyway, there's just a deep history there. Think about it. And, so I have sat and listened and read and talked to my friends. There's a white woman and a black woman who are doing this together. I don't know how active they are currently, but this was pre-COVID when I was involved. But it just really is energizing and, makes you listen again. Well, we should never stop listening, right?
Right.
Because it's not in my face, right? It's not in my face, but I know it's there.
Another comment, I think, because now we live in a time when divisions between different ethnic groups are exacerbated. So I think part of the solution, maybe long-term, is to really educate people to make them understand that this concept of race is not real. We are only one race, the human race. And people are different skin colors depending on where they live or the environment they have grown up in, like people in Australia or people in Africa. It's just a matter of pigmentation of the skin. It's not that you are different people. We are all the same race. And I think children have to be taught that from very early age. And that is part of the solution. And also when two little kids are put together, little black kid and little white kid, they don't see the color of the other.
They don't.
You know, during my career, I worked with people from about 180 different countries. Okay, so you had all kinds of people, all different color, different face, different traditions, different everything. And we learned to be together, and then after with them for, and some are good, some are bad, that's the human nature. But you become colorblind. You don't see the color of people. They are just people, so this is an education that has to be, especially maybe in rural areas like here, when you have a majority of white people, so they tend to see the other groups as, and they are bombarded all day long with negative information about these groups, crime or whatever. The whites do that too. I mean, so it's part of the education from a very, very young age and change the perception. I think it's a long-term project, but it can be done. If groups like this, when you start teaching children in churches, in school, and everywhere, it's I think it's the basis. That should start somewhere.
We should have more children here today. Mrs. Washington.
Well, think about children, and since you brought that up, it came to my mind. Our youngest grandson's 18. When he was in kindergarten, the kindergarten teacher said, you're gonna have grandparents' day. And so you have two grandmother's day. And you're gonna have two grandmothers come, one's white, one's black. And so you need two invitations. And Maxwell said, I have two grandmothers, but I don't have a white one and a black one. And I know the lady very well. She said,
he took his crayons out of his box and he said, this is a black crayon and this is a white crayon. I don't have any grandmas that look like that. He said to him, well, Max, what color are your grandmas? She was being honest. She just was like at a blank. What color are your grandmothers? He said, shades of brown. And so when you look at people, there's no white people and there's no black people. There's some real dark brown people and there's some real light pink people, but they're shades of brown. And so that's what we've taught the grandchildren, that everybody is just shades of brown, different shades. And that was because of a kindergarten child saying that. So I want you to think about what God said. The children will lead you, you know? And so ever since Max was 6, that's what we've been teaching the children. Every child that I come in contact with, there's shades of brown. So I just wanted, when you said that, that made me think about Maxwell.
Yeah, I found your story about the day you graduated. I was sitting back here almost crying, thinking about you as a child. And I have heard a similar story from my partner's brother about the day he graduated from high school. And the way he was, someone wanted to take him out for a meal and there was no place they could take him and he said, you know, in his 80s, he remembered that. And thinking about today, this is a start, but what Garnell and I happen to know, which maybe is that there's many children of color in the schools right now who are being picked on regularly. And the school has no idea what to do about it. I'm thinking a lot about what to do about it. I haven't figured it out, but it's like I'm all for the historic research, but we have to be willing to look at what's happening right now also. And I'm all for this kind of conversation, but then we have to be willing to get out there and talk to people who are not necessarily comfortable coming to this conversation. And I'd like to throw out that knowledge to everybody here that every single day there are children in our schools who are being called names, who are being picked on, whose teachers are well-meaning teachers even are they're getting these little tricks and there's things happening to them and in a way it's our responsibility to face that too. I'd like help in figuring out what to do because I don't know, but it's weighing on me. I'll say that it's weighing on me.
When you listen and learn, and Peggy, it is so true. But whether this would help or not, my opinion, as far as what to do, is that teacher, the student, the parents of those that are whose kids are picking on these kids, with the principal, they all should come together and sit down and talk about this so that this does not continue to happen. Because if you don't do anything, it's still going to occur. We know there's bullying in school. I mean, they pick on probably just about everybody. But when it comes to something like this needs to be nipped in the bud right away. And the only way that's going to happen is them to get together with the students and the parents.
I agree, and unfortunately, right now in our schools, there's these very strong voices intimidating teachers and school boards and principals. You're not supposed to talk about this, and they are. I happen to know that they are terrorized and intimidated, and that our side has not spoken up as strongly as we ought to in this community about that.
The school officials are very clear and certain about that.
That they're afraid to say anything, even if they want to.
You know.
Because of the voices that are.
And they might as well put the sheets back on again.
Yeah.
And I think that.
Don't give them any ideas.
No, that's true.
And that's totally the thing. Dee's right, you know, it's discrimination is part of the story. So it's not just that people do or don't see color. Part of it is the response to the thing. So part of like justice is to name what's happening and to respond. Like, so if people are fighting in the street, you say like, what happened? So you gotta like be able to say what happened. So this is a great first step in being able to say, first, at least you can look at difference. That's what we're doing today. But now we have to be able to look at the, you know, the situations that are causing the problem. There's lots of answers. Bill and Sylvia.
I just wanted to say that we have elections coming up and apropos what we're talking about. Pay attention to the school board part of that election. That's really important. You're making school board elections, so what? It's not so what, they're really important.
That's where the battle is being fought right now.
School board.
And right there, and we need to really pay attention to that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about the school board, but I'm from Hollidaysburg School District. In the last election, I called two women who were very vocal that were running, and their big thing was, we do not want critical race theory taught in our schools. And I said, nobody is teaching critical race theory. What are you talking about? I said, if you don't want Black history, you're wrong. I mean, history should be taught. Well, we don't want our children to feel terrible. I said, aren't going to feel terrible. There's nobody teaching anything that's going to make the children feel terrible. They got on the school board and we had just enough to override them. We have another election coming up and boy, it's loaded the wrong direction. Now it's not really race. Now we are back on sexual orientation and they are vocal about everything. They want more discrimination than ever. And it's a battle. It's a major battle for the school boards.
Gary, sorry for that. Gary. Go ahead.
I think that when I went to school, which would have been what?
Long time ago.
Years and years and years and years.
You know how many years. But I think it is a lot better. But I think we still got a ways to go. And I think we just need to go by that statement. All men are created equally. All people. And I think that it is a step for me and my family because my father owned, drove, and raced his own horses, which most of the blacks worked for whites. And I don't know how many times my mom would say, get your father, get your father. Whereas somebody said something to him and he punched them, you know, and I think it's a lot different now than when he was racing horses, you know, and
Yellow.
I have a hand up. Somebody else has questions.
Oh, okay. Outdoors.
I'm part of a book club that we are reading, an interesting book now called White Evangelism Racism, but there was one sentence in that book talking about color blindness, and I need to do more thinking on this. But if I got the gist correctly, it said, if a white person is saying I'm colorblind, it means I'm seeing you as white. I'm not really seeing that we are a world of different hues, colors of brown, but maybe that's.
When someone says colorblind, to me, it's like they didn't see me as black. Race wasn't an issue, but I am black, and you do see me as that.
They aren't seeing you at all.
Right. I know sometimes people say it to try to prove that they're not racist. They're, oh, I'm colorblind. And what they don't understand is I'm okay if you see my color. Just don't treat me different because of my color. We're all different colors in ways, with different hairstyles. But on one hand, one person had said this to me, I'm colorblind, but then on the other hand, they said some very racist stuff. And I'm like, okay, so I don't understand, you're colorblind, but you're saying some racist stuff. And, I'm like, I want you to see my color. I'm okay with it. I think we can have a. I mean, George, you've been part of our conversations where we were like, it's important that we all share our stories. Like, I would love to hear your stories as being, not a person of color. How were you raised when you saw, Black people on TV if you weren't raised around them? Like, what was your kind of focal point? That would be interesting to me as something to hear as someone to speak on. Because I've talked to my friends, but it would be interesting to see what it would be like, or what it was like.
Yeah, maybe that is a good final question. We all have a discrimination story. Just take 10 seconds to think about, what is your story of discrimination? This is our community. And a lot of times I think people say they're colorblind because they don't, it's ugly, it's unbearable. But Lisa's right, like, what is your discrimination story? We'll take 3 seconds. Okay, sure.
I'll give you a 10-second my story on what Lisa's just referencing. I was raised by very, at first they were pretty underground about it, or I was naive, but then I realized where their inclinations were with race. And I was one of 5 and the only redhead. And redheads get smashed for something they don't have control over, especially when they're little. So I needed an explanation. Why does these people's skin matter to you? Explain it to me. Pretty logical, pretty rational, pretty simple person. Just tell me what your answer is. And the question so confounded them. And I was a young child. And I knew right then that I had hit the truth. So then I just searched on my own, and here's my 10 seconds. One night I was up late unusually, and there was a TV in the house, also unusual. And I saw, probably it had to have been Johnny Carson, and Louis Armstrong was on. And that was my experience. And I remember looking at my father and saying, I get it. I finally get it. You're jealous. I said, you're never going to be that beautiful. It's not possible. And you're jealous. That's what it is. And it was even deeper side. And that led into a over 20-year alienation when I became free enough to walk away from my family. And what brought it back was the next generation. I had the only grandchildren, and they hadn't seen me. And they didn't want to lose another generation. And so it cracked what I called concrete. I said, they'll never change. They will not. But, there it is. The dandelion pops up through the concrete.
That's awesome.
2 more and then we're gonna go.
When I talked about being colorblind, and we mentioned that somebody
Louder, please.
rather than stand up and your voice it's helpful. Oh, it does help. When I talked about being colorblind when you were with people from different origins, I don't think being colorblind means that you see everybody white. I mean, it's accepting everybody's difference and being accepting of, the other person. It's not just black and white. As I said, I worked with people from 180 countries, and we were always interacting. And after some time, you know that person as from being from Uzbekistan or Mongolia or the Middle East, and they have different religions, different skin color, different faces, and so on. And You know them as they are, and you accept them as they are, with their difference. It's not seeing them as white. I don't agree with that concept.
Everybody in that corner.
I'll share something that happened with my daughter. I raised her in the Washington DC area.
Louder, please.
I raised her in the Washington DC area, and she's brown skin. And I realized when she came home from school one day, she said, "Mommy, I'm white." She held up this side of her hand. And I turned her hand over, I said, "No, sweetheart, it's this side of her hand." What I had to do was help her to value herself. I told her over time, I had repeated, white people aren't as good as you are. Because usually people do the reverse. But I was angry when she first told me. I knew it was going on. But I knew if I stayed angry, she was gonna pick up that anger. That was anger, it was not gonna help her. So what I did was I went through all of our family. I said, if you're white, you couldn't have your grandmother. You couldn't have the same grandfather. You couldn't have the auntie. And it was appealing to the love. And I think that, to me, that was the secret. She had to learn it wasn't just her disliking herself, but she had to understand if I'm different, I'm not going to have the same family who loves me, who I love. And it really was a lesson for me that we have to, when we change, it has to be because of the love. Anger is important, it has its place. But when we appeal to our children, when we value them, when we teach them to value themselves and to value others, I had to tell her at another time. She said one time, "Mommy, am I special?" I said, "Yes, you are special, but so is everybody else." So there's a balance. But I really have learned when you teach, whether it's adults or children, it has to be with each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
This goes just back to the colorblind, again. It is about different households and how we each see each other. Because Sam, my friend that I brought to speak today, also kind of like long history, father figure in many cases. He just looked at me and said, he thought he understood her version of colorblind. I understood the other version of colorblind. This is the difference between the households talking to each other.
That's perfect.
Right.
Yeah, that's the love that she's. Yeah. Ayana is speaking of there, like the absence of love, let's get it straight, is hard. Someone said in a Quaker meeting yesterday, I was in, hardening your heart to what you see. Hardening your heart to what you see and what you've noticed. So like Sam and Mandy are talking about contrasting ideas. A hardening heart would be to close the door on for Mandy to close the door on what Sam's saying, or for Sam to close the door on what Mandy's saying. And a lot of times people do it for the best of intentions. This stuff is unbearable sometimes to think about. But the point of discrimination, one thing is, I loved Iona's story because, nothing terrible is going to happen from a name. But something terrible is going to happen from the cover up that comes with from covering up the story. When your child says something and you're not able to say the truth to the child, that's when the trouble starts happening, right? So that's where, hello. Let's let Delores say something.
See ya. Something to drink back there and snacks, help yourself. And don't forget the donation.
Where'd it go?
Good out. I know you're. Oh, yeah.